Families Helping Families. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Melinda Elliott, our LACAN leader. She's going to share some information with you about LACAN. Let's let her speak.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So I'm the LACAN team leader in Region 5. If you were here for our webinar in the morning, you're just going to hear a repeat now. I apologize. It's all kind of the same thing. I like people to know about LACAN. We do grassroots advocacy for the Louisiana Council's Advocacy Network. I bet you that Wallace has already dropped a link in the chat. Grassroots organization where moms, dads, people with disabilities, people that care about people with disabilities, professionals that are interested in people with developmental disabilities and special education issues. So when I started working with LACAN, the only way you got a waiver slot is if somebody died or moved out of state. We worked hard, 28, 25, I forget, years ago to get more money into the system so that there were more waiver slots. It took a few years, but we were successful getting probably hundreds of millions of dollars when you figure the state money and the federal match into the system. We have a system now where if you need a waiver slot for your loved one within the next year and you know it, you can apply and might easily get one in the next 90 days. You might want to talk to somebody at the Families Helping Families office. Just because there might be other people on here. I work in Beauregard, Allen, Calcasieu, Jeff Davis, and Cameron parishes, but there's somebody like me in every region of the state. New Orleans kind of shares a person because they're so large. They're two separate regions, but there are 9 of us. So we work on systems change, usually through legislative advocacy. Someone will notice something that isn't working correctly or that could work better, and they will bring that to our attention, and it may or may not get on the advocacy agenda. The Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council actually decides that agenda. And so like in last year, one of the things that came up was incontinence supplies, and we actually didn't even have to go to the legislature over that, given that we were the home and community-based waivers, the adult waivers in particular, the now waiver, the row waiver, and the supports waiver were the only waivers that we know of that didn't have incontinence supplies included. LDH and OCDD agreed with a letter of intent before the legislative session to include that because we were going to work on it. Well, not because, but that was one of the things we were ready to work on. I think the last time I heard Julie Hagan speak last week, she said that they would be ready for that to be something offered in the waivers in October. So they should be coming up with the procedure here shortly. And there's other things that we've worked on that somebody has brought up that just doesn't work right with the waivers. There's actually 4 waivers, by the way. There's another one called Children's Choice, but they were getting incontinence supplies through EPSDT, early periodic testing, screening testing. Yeah, I lost it in all of the letters. I'm sure somebody knows all of the words better than I do. Special education. So that's kind of tricky because if it's covered under federal law or state policy, then that's the way that you have to go with those issues. But on occasion, there have been issues that weren't covered in those two ways. So like restraints and seclusion, there wasn't a policy, even though there were policies in prisons and hospitals. There weren't policies in school. And outside behaviors in the school system, that was an issue. So we have laws about those. And I know I hear from people all the time that the not all the time, but often, that the laws aren't working correctly, and maybe they need some work. But there was a law now where there wasn't any. Even diplomas. There's the April Dunn Act, which gave people with significant disabilities the ability to be able to get a diploma, given certain conditions. That was major. And maybe there's something else that I don't know of, that we as a group don't know of. Like I said, we bring our ideas to the duty council. They make the ultimate decision. So what are you getting? You sign up for LACAN. It doesn't cost you anything. You go to that link. You fill out the form. You become a member. You get emails that explain these issues to you. And my hope and my contact with you will be for you to contact your legislator over these issues. Not everybody can contact over every issue. That's one of the charming things about there being so many of us. I think in this region there's 700 of us, is that some of us can do stuff some of the time. And sometimes I need people to tell their stories, and there's lots of opportunities to tell your stories. There is legislative visits. We try to visit every legislator before session to talk about our legislative agenda. There is the round table. I have a legislative round table every year, and people talk about the legislative issues. They tell their story about different legislative issues that we have. Some people do go to Baton Rouge and testify in front of the committee. Not everybody, but some people do. And maybe you bump into your legislator at the parish fair, and you get to talk to him for 2 minutes. You have something in your mind that you can talk about quick, an issue you can talk about quick, and you know, that can make the world of difference. But I invite you to sign up. Let me check the chat box. Wallace posted the link and is doing housekeeping. So I'm going to stay for the entire webinar. If you think of questions, chat me up in the chat box. I will answer in the chat box. And I believe I am done, Carla.
Thank you so much, Melinda. We really appreciate that information. Next, we are pleased to welcome Ms. Melissa Raymond, our very special guest from Milestones Behavioral Services. Melissa is the founder and clinical director. Today, she will be sharing with us her expert opinion on how social skills impact children with special needs. This webinar is being recorded and all lines are muted, so please put your questions in the chat box. However, we ask that you hold the questions until after the end of the webinar. With that said, I ask that you give your full attention to Miss Melissa Raymond and help me welcome her. Here you go, Miss Melissa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the very nice introduction as well. There are a few slides in here where I'm going to ask for some participation in the chat box, just so you guys have a heads up on that. Of course, not required, but it is more fun and interactive. We are going to talk about social skills today. Social skills, I think, is a really complex topic to talk about and a hard thing to teach and work on. So I hope through this presentation today, I'll be able to give you guys a few tools that you can put in your toolbox to be able to help your loved ones, or if you work with families to help pass down to the families. Thank you. Oh, switch slide. There you go. Thank you to Families Helping Families for having me for this presentation. It worked out great that our logos also match the colors. So at Milestones, we provide applied behavior analysis services to children that have autism and developmental disabilities. We work on all kinds of skill deficits, addressing on language, communication, and of course, social skills as well. I am a licensed behavior analyst, and I am also very active in multiple organizations that work towards access for services for children with developmental disabilities. A little bit briefly about ABA. It's the scientific approach to understanding behavior. It refers to a set of principles that focus on how behaviors are changed and affected by the environment, and as well as how learning takes place. I wanted to mention this because when we talk about teaching social skills, it's important to know that in the field of ABA, things are gradual. We're going to take complex skills and we're going to break them down into very small, teachable units. That way it's not overwhelming for the individual who's being taught or for the teacher. Social skills can be very complex. So my hope is through this presentation is to help you identify ways to break those skills down into smaller parts and to be able to teach new skills. All right, so let's talk about social skills. What do we mean when we mean social skills? If you'll put in the chat box an example of a social skill, that would be awesome. We're going to talk about some as well, but I want to see what you guys have. For example, maybe greeting, telling someone hi might be an example. Let's see, making friends. Excellent. Thank you for that. Knowing what to do when meeting people, sharing toys with friends. These are all really great examples of social skills. If you haven't typed and you want to, I will keep an eye on the chat box as we go. Thank you to everyone who did. There is a long, long list of social skills, and there's no way that we could cover every single social skill that there is out there. I did put here for a reference just a list of some social skills, and most of the ones that you guys mentioned are on this list. All right, so why are social skills important? Well, social skills are really important. They're important for building effective communication, building relationships, navigating social situations, and life skills are important for daily living and greatly impact the quality of life. When we're talking about keeping friends, yes, thank you. Talking about social skills and friends and relationships with others, I think we can all agree that no one wants to be lonely. No one wants to feel alone. That doesn't mean you don't value your time alone, but you want to be able to have that relationship and connection with someone. And so that's really important for all individuals, regardless of kind of personality, preference, disability or not. When we're talking about teaching social skills, one thing that's really important to know is when you need to intervene, and what are some signs that you can look for to determine, is this something that I may need to work on with my child more? Is it something I need to see about getting some professional help with? So these are a few things that you can look for. Does the individual spend most of their time alone? Yes. Not wanting to interact with people. That's one of the things that is here on this list. Do they seem irritable when interacting with other people? And I don't mean just in a bad mood, but like, oh my gosh, stop talking to me. Why are people talking to me? Difficulty with peers at schools. A lot of times you'll not always notice at home, especially if there's not many people in the home, but at schools, having a hard time getting along with peers is a sign that there may be a deficit. Highly rigid, appears depressed, sad, anxious when around others, anxious when in public, or resist leaving the house because of contact with others. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. If you have a concern, I certainly always encourage you to reach out for further assessment. There are also some assessments that you can do. I'm not going to review them in this presentation, but doctors, behavior analysts, psychologists, psychiatrists all have tools that they can use as well. You can also find a lot of those online, and they're pretty parent friendly. It's important to know when we're talking about social skills that the aim is not to change the child. There are individuals who are quieter, who are shyer, who need more alone time than other people, and those things are all fine and okay. We don't want to change who the child is, but we do want to help them become the best version of themselves. I think that's something that we can all relate to, is sometimes kind of needing that extra push, that outside source to become the best version of ourselves. I know right now I'm trying to be a little healthier, live a healthy lifestyle. And so I working with someone to help me become the best version of myself. So that's what we really mean when we talk about teaching social skills, embracing the individual and helping them grow and develop into their own personality. So when we're talking about teaching social skills, what should we do? Where do we start? I know there's a problem. What can I do at home? Well, the first thing you can do is select a skill to work on. And this is what we're going to look at more closely, is each of these steps. You're going to pick a skill to work on, break down the skill into small teachable parts, and then practice, encourage, and praise. So this is the same list that we looked at a few minutes ago. I'm going to pick a skill off of this list for us to practice with. When you're trying to decide what skills do you need to work on with people, you want to observe that individual in a variety of social settings, with peers their age, with peers who are older, with peers who are younger, in different types of settings, maybe in public, hangout. We have different behaviors when we have different audiences. Sometimes, especially with children on the autism spectrum, which is the area I work with the most, some of our clients will interact with the adults just fine. And the older clients, you would not see one single social deficit. But when you put them with peers their age, you start to see those deficits more clearly. So it's important to see a variety of social situations when we're looking at identifying those deficits. All right, once you do identify the deficits, you want to select a skill to teach. So we're going to look at, for example, move my screens around, using good manners. Let's see, how would we teach good manners? How would we promote that social skill? What could we do to help someone learn those skills? All right, well, the first thing we said we need to do is break down the skill into smaller teachable parts. So in the chat, I want you to give me a specific example of a behavior that has to do with having manners. What's something that you would think you would say, oh, you had very nice manners? So an example might be saying, excuse me. Yes, saying polite words. Excuse me is one of those examples of those polite words. Let's see if anyone has anything else. Yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am, especially down here in the South. That's something that is important. And actually, one of our clients recently, that was something that their parents said they wanted as a goal, was using the words yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. There are lots of different things with manners. We're going to just pick a few to look at when we talk about breaking the skill down. So saying please is a social skill, using manners. Can I please have that? Will you please do this? Pretty please. All right, so let's look at the word please. First thing we want to do is that we want to practice and role play the skill. This is going to be your best tool in teaching social skills. When we talk about practice and role play, I mean outside of the situation where you need to use the skill. So if I'm working with an individual, I want to talk with them about the word please and when it should be used. when you're talking to adults, everyone might have different kind of rules. When you want to be extra nice, when you're in school, when it's your teacher, and then you're going to model using the word please. So a model would look like, if I wanted to ask you for your toy, I would say, can I have your toy, please? If the child's language is less, of course, you would match your model to their behavior. So then you want to have your child repeat the model. All right, I'm going to say it, and then you say it. Can I have the toy, please? And the child says, can I have the toy, please? You say, okay, let's practice. Give the child a pen, and you'll say, hey, I'm going to ask for that pen. This would be your model. Can I have the pen, please? Thank you. And then you have an item and tell the child, your turn to ask me for the water bottle. Say, can I have some water, please? The child copies, can I have some water, please? And they can get the water bottle. So you're practicing outside of the situation where the child actually needs to engage in the behavior. While you're practicing, I have this on the end, but I got to say it now, is to provide praise. We all do the things we do because we get something out of it, because our behaviors are rewarded, they're reinforced. So when the child repeats the word please, I'm going to say, oh, I love that you said the word please. That was so nice, which should be reinforcing to the child and increase their likelihood of using the word please. So once you've role played and practiced, and it can be that quick, just how we just did it once or twice, sometimes, depending on the level of deficits, we may need longer sessions. It may need to be in a treatment therapy setting. It might need to be overseen by a behavior analyst. But a lot of these things you can just do at home with your child as well. And they don't have to take a long time. So just keep that in mind. Every child is different. So everything's going to need to be individualized. That is a really good question in the chat. Do you find that modeling is effective with signs and nonverbal students? If they have an imitative repertoire, like they can copy, then yes. If they don't have a imitative repertoire where they can copy me, I would probably want to first work on that skill and increase communication before working on this particular skill of manners. We would still work on social skills, just probably not this particular one. So that, again, that's going to kind of go back to it being individualized. All right. So please, we role played, we practiced. Then we're going to find a natural opportunity just during our regular old day for the child to use the word please. Now, just because you practiced it once, they're probably not going to automatically be thinking, let me say please. So you probably will need to remind them to use the word. You'll do it the same way as you practice it. Hey, remember, you can say, can I please have some cookies? The child says, please, can I have some cookies? And you say, oh, yes, you can. Here's your cookies. And thank you for being so polite. So we want to provide praise throughout. All right. So we're teaching manners, right? Please is only one small part. What else can we teach? Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. That's actually something that you put in the chat. So we're going to do it the same way. We're going to break down the skill into smaller teachable parts and follow that same sequence. We're going to role play. Went ahead. We're going to role play. You're going to talk about when to use the words ma'am and sir. You're going to talk about when it's a female and when it's a male. You're going to say ma'am versus sir. You're going to talk about when it's someone older, when it's your teacher, your aunt, your uncle. You're going to practice those words. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to say, yes, ma'am. Do you like the color green? Yes, ma'am. Say yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I love how you say yes, ma'am. That was so great. So providing that praise throughout. You're going to practice it again outside of the moment, but then encourage it during those natural opportunities. Remember, the child will need reminders, and you'll model it and they will repeat it, and will provide praise throughout. Another example, covering your mouth when you cough. That's another polite, good manners, and spreading of germs skill. it's going to look similar. We're going to get to a more complex example after this. I just wanted to kind of use some examples that were a little more simple before we went on to a more complex skill. They will all follow the same format though. All right, so we're going to talk about why is it important for you to cover your mouth when you're coughing. We're going to talk about germs. We're going to talk about you don't want to feel the wetness of someone else's cough. And you're going to show the child how to cover their mouth when they're coughing. You might show them to use your arm. You might show them how to use your hands, just depending on your preference on the child. And then you're going to practice by pretending. Coughing, this is one that you're probably mostly going to cover when the child has a cough. But practicing and role playing, you can pretend, or, like, oh, use your arm, covering your mouth. Again, natural opportunities. You're going to practice it, encourage it, and give praise. It's really important as we're going through these that you're thinking about those small teachable steps. It's hard to jump all the way to the end goal. And we're going to look at another example of a big end goal, but how we can get there. All right. So when we're talking about teaching social skills, we talked about select the skill, break it down, practice, encourage, and praise. So let's look at another example of that. Being a good sport and a good loser. I think almost all of the clients I work with have a challenge when it comes to winning and losing. So this is a big topic. How do you teach that? Well, the first thing we've got to do is break it down into small, teachable parts. All right. I kind of wrote some. I kind of went fast. You guys tell me in the chat. What are some skills that you think are important? What do you think individuals need to know? What behaviors do they need to engage in order to be a good sport or a good loser? I know a lot of the clients that we work with have challenging behavior when they don't win, or when they're not first in line, or when they get skipped for a turn. And we see some challenging behavior. And so teaching all of these replacement skills of what they should be doing instead is really, really important. Your examples are great. Yes, congratulate others, show compassion and empathy for others. Those are really great. When I'm giving examples, by the way, of breaking these skills down, your examples are right too, and they could be on this slide. I just picked a few. So know that there are different ways to break the skills down. That's what makes them so complex. There's different ways of teaching it. There's lots of different components. Self-control, yes. Properly expressing disappointment, yes. I think most of these we're actually going to cover here in the presentation. All right, so we're going to look at following the rules of the game, encouraging and cheering on others, and being a good loser. Those are going to be those behaviors whenever the child does not win, does not come in first, isn't first in line. All right, so first up, follow the rules of the game. Okay, so first we're going to review the rules of the game. We are going to read the rules and explain them in an understandable way. You may not just read from the paper. You may also be modeling some and showing them the rules. Keep them as simple as possible when you're talking about the rules of the game. It could also be, by the way, the rules of the classroom, the rules of the kids' gym, the rules of anything. All right, so we're going to practice and role play each of the rules. For some individuals, you may be able to read the whole list of 10 rules and then just know them all. But more than likely, we're going to need to break them down and practice each of those skills. Some of the clients that we work with, we first just work on rolling the dice. And maybe that's all we're working on with following the rules is the very first step, you roll the dice. Versus others, we can teach the whole game at one time. It is important that you role play and practice each rule of the game. Modeled desired behaviors. So we talked about, just like we modeled the coughing, we modeled using the words please. You're going to model moving your piece one space at a time, spinning the spinner, going on the color that you land on, whatever the rule may be. The child will copy you and you'll provide praise. Yes, that is exactly how you go forward 2 spaces. So again, lots of praise throughout. Then you play the game. Once you feel like the child has a good understanding of the rules, we're going to play the game, and we're going to play the game focusing on, do they follow the rules? We're going to get to all of those other things later, but we've got to first teach one thing at a time, and we chose following the rules. So we're going to practice the games with the rules. There may still not be the best sportsmanship there. If that's a big deficit and area that needs to be addressed, but we can't pile it all on one time, because if we're teaching the rules and being nice to others and taking turns and losing and this and that, it gets bogged down. It gets bogged down for the person who's trying to help. It gets bogged down for the person who's trying to learn. And it's a lot of details going on at one time. So first, let's just work on following the rules. All right. I'm going to always have there. Remember to provide lots of praise. That's what's going to increase those behaviors as reinforcement. All right. So now that we're following the rules, we can work on the next social skill related to being a good sport, and that is encouraging and cheering on others. All right. So we're going to follow the same pattern. We're going to pick a phrase or an action to teach. Way to go. High five. Nice job. Depending on the child's deficit, you may pick just one, or it could be a thumbs up, by the way, for nonverbal individual. High fives I also really like, or whether it's a verbal or nonverbal individual. But you're going to pick whatever is best for your child or your loved one. All right, role play and practice. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to win the game. I'm going to get to land on a double and practice saying, that was awesome. Good job. Cool. That was great. So that would be cheering on, encouraging when someone doesn't get what they want, saying, I'm sorry, maybe you'll get it next time. That would be the encouraging part. So you can practice both of those. And then once you've practiced it in a more contrived way, play the game. And now you can play the game. You know how to follow the rules. But we're also going to add in cheering on each other and encouraging others. So now we've got two kind of parts of being a good sport and being a good loser going. All right, we're not done there. We can also look at the good loser part. All right, so we're following the rules. We're encouraging others. We're telling people they're doing a good job. But what about when I lose? What am I supposed to do? I don't like to lose. All right, pick a behavior you want the child to engage in when they are losing. For this one, a lot of times it is going to be easier, important, most effective, not to have a long list of things they can do. For children who really struggle with losing, you want to pick one behavior, maybe two, that you can teach them to do. This picture is perfect because crossing your arms and going is acceptable. I think when we lose, it's okay to be a little bit bummed. Remember, we're not trying to like completely change who the child is. If it stinks you lost, it stinks you lost. But we can teach you what to do when you're feeling that way, how to express it, and then we'll also incorporate it in with the encouraging others and being a good sport. All right, so crossing your arms, saying, oh man, bummer. I didn't know if bummer was still a current word, so if it's not, replace it with something that kids are saying these days. But by giving that specific behavior, it lets the child know exactly what they should do. It also gives you something that you can provide that praise and reinforcement for. So when you're practicing it, role play and practice, I say, okay, I'm going to pass you up, or, I'm going to get there first. When I get there, you can say, oh man, here we go. Run, you get there first, or move your paces on the board. Remember, you can say, oh man. Child says, oh man, and you provide some reinforcement. Oh man, I know you really wanted to win. Hey, let's play again. So taking time to practice it and then do it very naturally. You can see how these complex skills are just broken down into smaller teachable units, and we are following the same kind of order that we took with the previous skills. All right. I am going a lot faster than I thought I would. All right. So teaching social skills. Recap, pick the skill that you want. You can do that by observing the individual, observing the child, doing it in a variety of situations. You can also use an online tool as an assessment. Reach out to your child's pediatrician, to a behavior analyst, a psychologist, psychiatrist. All of those people can help you identify skills, and start small, break the skill down into small teachable units. One of the examples I wanted to put on here and I didn't was like interacting with others and talking about how that we can break that down. That's something that everyone wants for their loved one, is to have friends, play the game, be in the group. But sometimes people just are not interested. So we start sometimes with just being in a room with lots of other people with noise and kind of tolerating that. Once we get that going, we get a little bit closer to the other people in the room. Once we're good with that, we get a little bit closer. So again, is starting where the child's at and then making those goals nice and small as we get there. Teaching social skills can take a lot of time, but it doesn't have to. You can do it very naturally. It can take only a few minutes, but it's really important that you do take that time to practice it intentionally outside of the situation. In the moment when the social skill isn't happening is a lot of times where we want to teach. That's a good place to teach, but most often it isn't enough. Individuals need more opportunities to practice. They need to practice in a more controlled way where you can prompt them to engage in the behavior. Because once you're interacting with peers, you can't control what the peers are doing. You can't control where the peer is going to say yes or no, I want to play with you. You can't control if the person is going to respond to the child saying yes ma'am and think that's great, but you can be intentional about it in your practice. So taking just that little bit of time to practice is really important. Of course, encouraging the behavior to happen when there are natural opportunities is good. Remind the child ahead of time. So if you're going over to grandma's house and you want the child to say yes ma'am, say okay. When grandma asks you to do something or asks you a question, remember, use the word ma'am. Yes, ma'am. If you want to role play again, just in that moment, you can. Do you want a cookie? Yes, ma'am. Okay. So remind the child what words to use or what behavior to engage in. And if they don't, provide that model for them. Just give them the words. It's important to model, by the way, instead of just saying, hey, remember we talked about this. Remember the manners that we talked about. When someone is learning a new skill, a model is the quickest, most effective way to get the correct response. So just give them the words. We know they don't already have the skills, so give them the words, show them what to do. Our coughing example, I might go, like a reminder, this is what we're doing. So we do need to have those reminders in there, and always providing reinforcement and praise for those appropriate behaviors. All right. Teaching can take place anywhere. Children spend most of their time with their parents. Parents are always the best advocates for individuals with disabilities or without. You have the opportunity to teach and practice things all the time. Now, look, I'm a parent too. I'm not teaching and practicing every single second of the day, but taking advantage of those just very natural opportunities that you have in home, even if they're just here and there, really, really make a big impact on a child's life or on your loved one life. every little bit of teaching you do is important. I really want to emphasize that, because teaching and teaching social skills and helping with social skills doesn't have to mean going to a therapy center. It doesn't mean having to go see a professional. It doesn't have to mean we have to sit down and do a 30-minute lesson with stories and materials, and it's a big daunting task. It can happen in small little moments when you're in between things at home, in between things in the community. If you look for them, they're there. And I already put, you're an awesome teacher, everyone who's in here. And the reason I know that is because you're here, educating yourself on these topics, which tells me you want to have the skills, you want to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think that's pretty awesome. I want to answer a question from the chat real quick. What if the child believes that someone was cheating during the game? That is a very great question. That is something that I've worked with before with individuals. There are lots of different reasons why the child may think someone's cheating. So we want to make sure that the child understands the rules. And then the other thing that we would work on is how to communicate it. And then probably also some self-calming or coping skills. When it's someone cheating, it is okay to ask, right? We just need to make sure or say like, hey, did you go twice? Did you skip a turn to get the information? That's usually the easier part to teach. It's the reaction to when they say, nope, sure didn't, that we have to work on a lot of times. And that is almost going to be a skill in itself of like self-regulation in your emotions. Sometimes we work on being able to move on, being able to take a break. And a lot of times in the situations I've been in, the individual actually isn't cheating. It was a misunderstanding on the speaker's part of what was happening, which is related a lot to social cues and social skills and kind of missing some of those little details that other people see. I think, does anyone else have any other questions? Give everyone just a second, because that's all I had. Oh my gosh, it went so fast. I was worried about it being so long. I wanted to give you guys something I was hoping that you could use and that you could take with you. Just talking about social skills, I imagine if you're hearing this webinar, you know that they're important, and you want to know what you could do. So that's what I really wanted to give you. I wanted to give you what can I do? How can I help? Kind of presentation. And so I hope that's what you guys got. If you are interested in any more information, I am happy for Families Helping Families to share my information with you. And just thank you again for having me. I hopefully can come back and present some more to you guys and share some more information. All right, I'm gonna.
Well, we would like to thank you for attending our webinar, and thank you, Ms. Melinda. If you have any additional questions, you can call our office at 337-436-2570 or email us at info@familieshelpingfamilies.org. We ask that you please complete the survey from the webinar today that we emailed to you, and thank you and have a great day.
The survey is in the chat box as well. You can click on the link.
Thanks, Melinda, for the helpful
Yes, ma'am.
information. Right. If we don't have any other questions, we definitely appreciate y'all signing on, and we appreciate all the helpful information, Miss Melissa.
Melissa and Melinda.
Melissa, right? 2 M's.
That's
All
right.
Thank y'all
you.
so much. All right. Bye-bye.